Welcome to Island Baptist Church. Bill's lesson today is in Luke chapter 10 entitled, Jesus' Joy.
Good morning. Got a Bible with you? We're in Luke chapter 10. Luke 10, making our way through the book of Luke. Took us 5 months to get through one chapter, although I will say it was a big chapter. They won't all be that slow. Some will be way faster, so don't necessarily put a timeline on it, but basically, from Luke chapter 9, or the end of chapter 9 on, you're basically dealing with only about 4 months in Jesus' earthly ministry. What you need to know about Jesus' first 2.5 years of ministry is he healed a bunch of people, he fed a bunch of people, he did a bunch of miracles, and he preached a bunch of places. And that's all you need to know. That's really most of the Gospels are concerned really with only the last 3 or 4 months, and like the book of Mark, basically with only the last week of his life. Half of Mark is only dealing with 1 week of Jesus' life. And all the Gospels, all they ever cover pretty much is just 3 years. All we know about him is his birth, and then we don't know anything about him for 30 years. And then we're reintroduced to him as he brings himself publicly to the world. And so what we have here in chapter 10 on, is Jesus on his way to Jerusalem. It takes him 3 months, more or less. But he's resolutely set his face to go to Jerusalem, which means he's not going to dilly-dally anymore up in the Galilee area. He's making his way down. And the process that we have here from chapter 10 on is him dealing with his disciples on the day-to-day issues as they travel, as they deal, as he speaks to them, he's teaching them, and he's discipling them. What is a disciple? A disciple is a person who's constantly with Jesus, just not complicated. Discipleship. What is discipleship? Being with Jesus every day. That's what it is. How are you going to know somebody if you're not with them? How are you going to know how to follow them if you're not with them? So that's what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And we have this issue we've been looking at the past couple of weeks, this Jesus sending out these 70 unnamed people to go out and say the kingdom of God is at hand. And so now they're returning, and look at what happens, or look at what comes out of this. Chapter 10 of Luke, verse 17, and the 70, like I said, unnamed followers of Jesus, returned, and with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us. So they're rejoicing over yay, we beat the demon team, if you will. It's Friday night lights, kind of thing. And Jesus corrects them. He says, yeah, it did go well. I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Behold, I have given you authority to tread over serpents and scorpions. Those are not literal serpents and scorpions, okay? Because we have churches that want to pick up snakes because of this verse. That's not what he's saying, okay? Don't go grab a snake saying Jesus has given me power over snakes, okay? It's not in the Bible. He's talking about spiritual entities, far more dangerous, by the way, than snakes. Don't go grab a snake, or a scorpion. I've given you power over the enemy. They're not the enemy. Nothing shall injure you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice. Notice he's correcting their rejoicing. He says you're rejoicing over the wrong stuff. Rejoicing over the game you won, if you will, over the past week. The issue is not that game. The issue is the fact that what's already been won for you. Notice, nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven. That's the big deal. Games come and go. Victories, if you will, over demons come and go. But the fact that eternity has been settled for you is the big deal. And he passes here in verse 20 to verse 21, out of the joy that his disciples have, and correcting that joy, if you will, the direction of it. And it tells us something very special and unique about Jesus. Notice what it says here, verse 21. And at that very time, he rejoiced. Actually, the word there for rejoicing is to overflow, like he was beside himself in rejoicing. Rejoice greatly in the Holy Spirit, saying, I praise thee, O Father. Listen to this. Lord of heaven and earth, that thou didst hide these things, these truths, from the wise and intelligent. God's done that. That's what it says. You did hide these things from the wise and intelligent and just reveal them to babes. Yes, Father. For thus it was well-pleasing in your sight. Why would he rejoice over that? Let me just say this also. That is the only time that you find Jesus rejoicing in the entire New Testament. One shot. And only one reason. That Jesus, he doesn't just say, hey, that's awesome. He overflows with this rejoicing over the fact that God has hidden things from some people and revealed it to other people. Wow. That's interesting. In fact, it is very interesting because, like I said, you never find Jesus rejoicing, not in another gospel, not anywhere else in the New Testament do you find Jesus rejoicing in the here and now. Now, Jesus does have joy, and Jesus is constantly full of joy, but it's usually about future events. Usually about the future of all that God's going to do and the fact that we're going to be in heaven with Him. But those are yet future events. You only one time in the Bible, in the New Testament, find Jesus rejoicing about a current event, and this is it. So this is a special jewel. We are very familiar with, on the other hand, Jesus not so much in rejoicing, but we're familiar with Him in the sense of His sorrows. In fact, most that we know about Jesus is how He suffered, right? What did Jesus do? He suffered for you. He didn't rejoice. He will rejoice over you, but it was mainly suffering. In fact, predicted here in Isaiah 53. He is despised and rejected of men. Have you ever been despised and rejected? Was that a good day or a bad day? It's kind of bad. So yeah. Man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, you can understand. And we hid, as it were, our faces from Him. He was despised, and we did not esteem Him. Not a good thing. Not a helpful thing, not a thing that makes you feel good about yourself, for sure. And this was certainly Jesus' plight. He had lots to be sorrowful for, because notice, He's the creator of all things, but that's not the way He was treated. He was in the world was made through Him, and the world did not know Him. That's depressing. Came to His own, but His own did not receive Him. Doesn't make for a good day. I said we know more about His sorrows, we know more about what broke His heart, than we do about what didn't. We find Him weeping, for instance, over the plight of sin at Lazarus' grave, even though He knows He's going to raise Lazarus from the dead, yet He weeps at that funeral. Why? He's so saddened by what sin has done to us. So saddened that people have to die and that people have to cry and suffer the way that they did. We see Him weeping more than once over the city of Jerusalem. As He looks over the city, He says, if you would only have come to me, I would have gathered you like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But He says, you would not. You wouldn't. He weeps over them. In fact, the word there means to sorrow very deeply, like this very deep, bitter cry that you're crying so hard that you can't even speak words. That's the kind of crying it says He had. We're familiar with that. Are you familiar with this? Jesus said, notice Mark chapter 14, verse 34. He said to them, this is in the Garden of Gethsemane, this is the night before He's betrayed. In fact, it's right before He's betrayed. And be crucified the next day. He said to His disciples, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful. Have you ever been exceedingly sorrowful? I've been there. I expect to be there again. Not looking forward to it. But notice, Jesus' sorrow is even to death. We exaggerate. My wife and I have a daughter that exaggerates. I've told you 1,000,000 times, Dad. It hasn't been 1,000,000 times. I can promise you that. It hadn't even been 100 times. But she likes that word. She likes it because it's for emphasis. We exaggerate stuff. Is Jesus an exaggerator? I don't think so. I don't think He just throws words out. So when He says, it's killing me, it's killing Him. He sweats blood after this. You ever done that? I know you've been sorrowful. I'm not downplaying how much your heart's been broken. I'm just saying I don't think it's been like this. He was in desperate shape. Again, sorrowful. We know this part about Him. Again, Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 tells us sort of a day-to-day. How was Jesus on a day-to-day basis all the way through His life, in the days of His flesh, the whole time? When He had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to Him, who was able to save Him from death. This is day-to-day for Jesus. 33 years. We're familiar with this. We know this. But what made Him rejoice? Well, we have joy speaking of in the Bible, I mean, as far as Jesus is concerned, but it's always something about the future. Here's Zephaniah 3:17, God speaking, the Lord your God is in your midst, a victorious warrior. He will rejoice. Not yet, but He will. Rejoice over you with joy. He will be quiet in His love. He will rejoice over you with shouts of joy. It's coming because God's going to fix stuff. God's going to fix me. He's going to fix you if you let Him. So that there's going to be a day of joy for God, but it's not today. Again, Jesus, speaking of Jesus and how His perspective on the cross, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him, not yet, endured the cross. The cross wasn't joyful. He wasn't up there saying, yay, I'm hanging on the cross. This is so good. He suffered there, guys. He suffered. He was sorrowful there. There was a joy yet to be. Again, most of the verses we hear about the joy of God, the joy of Jesus, is something yet to be future, with one exception, verse 21 here. This one exception, Jesus says he's joyful today. I want to know what that is. I can use some of that. I don't know about you. I'm having a tough time with joy in my life, especially the world. If there's been a year and a half of which I've been less joy, it's been this past year and a half. I don't know about y'all. We've been through a lot, suffered a lot. I've had far better years and a half. In fact, I've really had a far better life prior to that. I've had COVID, and we were discussing just the lingering results of that sort of just drags you down. I mean, lots of people are suffering because of it. Lots of people suffering because they've lost loved ones. I'm suffering, and I think you probably are as well, because of the way our world is turned against God. I mean, they've been against God, but it's like it's been ramped up, like it's been on steroids and hit a higher gear in the past year and a half. It just seems that you have this just a tremendous wave against Christianity in general, but Jesus in particular. It breaks my heart. I mean, you think about it. Do you love people? Do you love anyone? So if you love someone and they are mistreated, does that make you happy? So I love Jesus. Jesus is being horribly treated in my culture. And I don't have a lot of joy for that. So I'm excited for you and for me. And I welcome this whole insight in Jesus' joy, because frankly, I need it. I mean, if first of all, I need to know who Jesus is, and so do you. But also I need to know, because this is what Jesus says. Notice in chapter 15, verse 11 here in John, Jesus says, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you." He's got joy, and we need it. I do. "And that your joy may be full." I don't just need to know about what Jesus is joyful about. I actually need to be filled with the joy of Jesus, because I can really feel it right now. Like I said, don't know about you. So I need to know it, because one, I need to know who Jesus is, and two, because really, his joy is my joy. So Jesus makes a statement here about joy, and it's very, like I said, very unique. He doesn't make it anywhere else. You don't find him rejoicing anywhere else in the here and now. And he makes it I would suggest to you, very unusual time. Because there were other times that I would say he should have been saying this, at least from a worldly perspective. Because Jesus, if you'll remember, this is the end. This is the tail end of his 3-year ministry. He's been speaking, preaching, healing, doing all kinds of stuff for 3 straight years. This is the last couple of months. This is the worst time of his 3-year ministry. There was a time 3 years before in which Jesus was, as we talked about before, an absolute rock star. He's healing everybody, feeding everybody, walking on the water, raising people from the dead. Everybody, and I mean thousands of people, are following him. By the time you find him here, where he's rejoicing, maybe a couple hundred, maybe even less than that. They've all washed out. Because why? Because mainly they were with Jesus for the same reason most people come to Jesus today, which is the totally wrong reasons. Back then they were coming to Jesus because why? Because free health care, right? And free food. That's what you got with Jesus. They were all socialists, right? Just like we are. We all want free stuff. We just want free stuff. And so Jesus provided free stuff, and so we love to be with Jesus. And as soon as Jesus stops putting out, well, guess what? We quit him. As soon as Jesus starts saying stuff that we don't agree with, even though he is the Son of God, he's got a right to say whatever he wants, we quit him. That's what's happening. So it's been pared down. Now, the whole leadership, the Pharisees, etc., have all fully committed to killing him. That's where he is now. It's like I said, it's a strange time to find him rejoicing. Now Judas is plotting to betray him. The whole world basically is turning against him. It seems as if he's a failure in the process that he's in. Of course, he's not. He's the Son of God. But it seemed like there would be another time he would rejoice. But it isn't. It's this time. So it's important that we understand why. Why does he rejoice at this point? It has nothing to do with the disciples. Like I said, he says, yeah, I understand we're rejoicing. You're rejoicing for the wrong things. You need to rejoice that your name is written in heaven. And he still points them to the future, but it still doesn't answer the question, why is Jesus rejoicing, at least in that day, today? And it tells us very clearly here. He rejoices because, as I've said before, as we read before, he's rejoicing because God's truth, God's plan of salvation, has been revealed to some and hidden to others. Wow, I don't know. At the very least, you would think it would be ambivalent. I'm so sad that these people can't get it and that these people do. You would think that at least. No, Jesus, it says he overflows with joy. He just bursts with joy. Strange, odd, at least in our way of thinking. He's brought to this overflowing of joy because he basically says, God, your plan is progressing. It's exactly the way you planned it to be. So it's not just something that God turned to after a time when people rejected Jesus. This is the plan that God had all along. He knew exactly how it was going to happen. By the way, that's what it means to be God. You know everything. In fact, you've always known everything there is to know. That's what it means to be God. How do you make decisions along those lines? Wow. Pretty confidently, I would suggest. So despite the way things look on the surface, like I said, Jesus' ministry seems to be winding down and people are leaving and people are rejecting him and people are trying to kill him. Nonetheless, God's plan is going exactly according to the plan. No deviations. God's sovereign. God's overseeing this. God's seen it from the very beginning. He knew it would work out. He knew how he was going to do things. And he set it up where, as it says here, some would know, some wouldn't know. In fact, he makes it very clear, the ones that aren't going to know are the ones who think, or at least, or who are claimed to be wise and learned and educated and have a lot going for them. But on the other hand, the babes would get it. And that may mean age, as in a child. It also may mean just as compared to these who think they're all that and a bag of chips. It may be that. So, but you think about it for just a second, it makes sense, doesn't it? That he put it down here instead of up here. If you put it up here where it takes a lot of education, a lot of know-how, a lot of experience, and a lot of brain power to get to it, that means those down here, like me and you, no offense, probably can't get it. It's going to be over our heads. So there's going to be a bunch of people who are eliminated because God puts it on the top shelf where only the gifted and smart and capable and successful can get it. Jesus says, I praise you that you didn't put it up there, you put it down here. Which, by the way, is the place where everybody can get it, including the people up there. See, you think about it. If I put it up here and you're down here, you don't got a chance. But if I put it down here and you're up there, you can access something on the bottom shelf. You just got to stoop. And that's what's keeping you out, by the way. Because these guys and gals over here who think they're all that in a bag of chips, they're not going to stoop. We're not doing that. We're submitting our education and our experience and our ability and how many letters we have after our name to you first, God, for your acceptance, and then we'll listen to what you've got to say. Because you've got to speak to our level. Jesus says, I praise you that you didn't allow a person like that to understand this. Again, it's not God keeping them. It's their unwillingness to stoop because it's down here. Well, I'm not lowering myself. Okay, you can have it that way. God knew it would be that way. It's what arrogance and pride does to us, right? Among other things. It's the place it puts us. These smart and clever people who think that the only way to reach God is by, I'm going to figure it out because I'm smart and clever. No, you're not. He's hidden it from people like that. And the way he hides it from them is he just simply puts it on the bottom shelf because he knows they won't stoop. They never will. Notice what it says here in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Verse 20. Just underscores this sort of commentary on what Jesus says. Where's the wise man? It's a rhetorical question with the answer of, we don't know. There's not one. Where's the scribe? Because of what God does. Where's the scribe? There isn't any. Where's the disputer of this age? There aren't any. How do we know that? Because of what it says there. Has God not made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since the wisdom of God, in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know God. So all of our advancements, all of our education, all of our collective wisdom, all of our psychology, all of our gathering of facts, empirical evidence, all these things with all of our brain power collectively through the ages. And we have missed the greatest reality in the universe. That is a sad commentary on where we are today, isn't it? So all of our advancements, if we ever lived in caves, from the cave to, I don't know what the mansion you live in today. All of that. And we have missed, with all of our understanding and education and ability, we've missed the greatest reality in the universe. It raises the question of, what else are we missing? If the end result of all this stuff means, the end of all this work means we haven't come across God, then maybe we ain't doing it right. In fact, maybe all that we're doing is not right. So, wow, betrays us, doesn't it? tells us what we really have going on, which apparently isn't all that much. It's not that God withholds truth from smart people. It's just that truth isn't accessible from that spot. Because I'm smart, I'm going to know God. Nope. Smart people miss God. Because I'm wise, I'm going to know God. No, wise people, if you think you're wise, you're going to miss Him. Educated people, successful people, because of my success, because I know how to lead, because I took a company public, because I did this, because I did that, therefore I'm more likely to know God than, simple people like you. Nope. Because the knowledge of God is right down here. Everybody can get to it. And you won't know Him because your pride won't let you stoop to get to it. The Bible calls them, the people that are like that, morons. And no kidding. In fact, it is the actual Greek. They became futile in their thoughts. It's futility. It's futile. We have a lot of futility going on in our world today, don't we? A lot of just backwards thinking. We hear a whole lot today about trust the science, believe the science. The main person, and again, not speaking against him, her, because I'm not sure how to refer to him, her. Surgeon General of the United States is a dude dressed up like a woman. You can do that. That dude dressed up like a woman is telling me to believe the science? So I know enough about chromosomes. You got an XY chromosome, you're either a dude or you're a gal. But you can't be both. And I understand, stuff happens in people's brains and they have issues, but we have the spokesman for believing the science is a person who's not believing the science. Holy cow, what else do we have going on? I have a huge problem with all of these issues, all these quote-unquote smart people, but the Bible makes it very clear what happens to us when we reject God, and notice what it says. They became futile in their thoughts. There's an example. Their foolish hearts were darkened. Not a better example. Professing to be wise, they became what? Fools. I want to focus on that word right there because the word in Greek is the word where we get our word moron from. They're not using it in a sense of derogatory term. It's just the word. It's a good explanation. The biggest, morons in the world, not using it pejoratively, derogatory, just simply using the word. The biggest morons in the world are persons who think that by their own wisdom, the collective wisdom of the world, that they're going to come to know God. That is moronic. It's not possible. You're always going to try to stay at the top shelf, and God's got it down here. You're going to miss the reality, the greatest reality in the universe you're going to miss because you hold on to that position. It's very sad. Biggest reality in the entire universe, God is inaccessible to our human intelligence and ingenuity. 100%. God is not empirically discernible. You're not going to run Him down. You're not going to figure Him out. You're not going to learn enough to get a hold of God. It's not going to happen. Now, He will reveal Himself to you, but otherwise, He's going to be out of your stoop, out of your reach. Just is. It's not that intelligence and clearly thinking wisely is not important. It's just not a player in the game. It can become a barrier if you think you have to have it to get to God. It's just not a player, okay? So you got an education, great. That doesn't mean anything about knowing God. You got experience, awesome. So you're a successful person, great, super. God bless us in those ways. God's blessed you. But don't think that is your ticket to knowing Him. And if you think it is, this becomes a barrier to knowing Him. I'm smart, I'm wise, I have breadth of mind. Okay, what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? Nothing. Nothing at all. So let me give you an illustration of the way to compare and understand why it's impossible through knowledge, through wisdom, through experience, through education, through letters after your name, why it's impossible through those things to know God. And the example I want to use is I want to compare two people. One is a 6-year-old child, imaginary, and the other is a nuclear physicist. First of all, so I've got them up here. Here they are. You see them? Okay. Which one is smarter? Depends on your definition of smart, because this child might be the next Einstein. We don't know. We don't know who she is. She may be brilliant, but she doesn't know a lot of stuff. We've not expanded her. We've not educated her. We've not given her a chance to show us what's really going on between her ears. So, but as far as if you're going to define smart as knowing more than someone else, obviously our nuclear physicist knows more than the 6-year-old child. Okay, we can do that. So what does he know, this nuclear physicist? He knows a bunch more than she does. He knows a lot of things about atoms and molecules and subatomic particles and the basic building blocks of our physical world. He knows about fission and fusion and all those things, by the way, which takes a ton of education and lots of learning. And honestly, and no offense, but most of us in this room don't have the capacity for it. Because why? Because we don't got a lot going on. I'm including myself. Got a lot going on up here compared to this dude here, okay? So he's smarter in that sense than us. But I want you to understand something. With all of his education, all of his knowledge, he only knows the basics of what's actually going on in the universe. It's just the bottom. He had to go through all of that education, spend all that money, and use all that brain power to get up to the bottom. By the way, you and I are below the bottom. So as for, he's the smartest among us. He's just up to here, and there's so much above it. And I demonstrate it this way. So I got the little girl, and I got the nuclear physicist. He's way smarter than her. He's way smarter than anybody else in this room. And yet all that he knows, all that he's gained, and all that knowledge is up to the bottom. He just knows that's just basic stuff. Molecules, subatomic particles. Yeah, some people know that stuff and some people don't. And with all of his education, all his brain power, he's able to achieve it. And some of us could get there and some of us couldn't get there. He's reached that level, but it's only the bottom level. And let's go a level higher. Let's talk about personhood. We'll talk about complicated. As complicated as nuclear physics is, not near as complicated as personhood. Let me show you. First of all, I'm not a complicated person. People that know me know. I mean, what you don't know may not know me very well. And you may think that's a blessing, and that's okay. But what you see pretty much is what you get. I have people here that know me for years. And other than I'm a little more animated right now and a little louder, pretty much this is me. In fact, one of my greatest goals in ministry is not be somebody, if you will, in front of people that I'm not, when I'm fishing in a boat or, I don't know, doing something else. So I'm not difficult. I'm pretty simple, and I don't really have the capacity to be that. Someone says, you're not smart enough to be a liar, Bill, and that's probably right, because I can't remember the thing that I said, and so it's better just to tell the truth because the truth never changes. Anyway, so let's have the nuclear physicist and the 6-year-old do something for us with a simple person like me. I want them to tell me what I'm thinking right now. Who's got the better chance? Little girl? Nuclear physicist. So what I'm thinking right now is a red chicken eating a purple ball. Do you think they could have come up with that? The little girl probably got a better shot at it. She's a little wilder thinking. I'm a kind of a wild thinking person. So I got all this guy with millions of dollars of education. Tremendous, all kinds of letters after his name, and tremendous ability and accomplishments. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But if I raise the bar of knowledge just to the level of personhood of an average person like me, he doesn't know. He got no better chance of knowing what's going on inside of me than the 6-year-old. Now that's it's not sad for the little girl, maybe sad for him. So all my accomplishments and just the level of existence of humanity, he can't tell you what's going on. He can only tell you, by the way, he'll never know what's going on inside of me unless I reveal it to him. By the way, and because I'm kind of a hardhead anyway, he's going to have to ask me. Because I got to hear him say, there's no way I can know what's going on inside of you, Pastor Bill, even with all my education. And then 2, would you tell me? And then I'll say, okay, I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll tell you. You see what I'm saying? He's got to stoop himself. He's got to divest himself of all of his education, all of his knowledge, all of his periodical table excellence has no bearing whatsoever on knowing me. And I'm average. So let's go to the highest level. So he understands the base level with all his education, but he can't know the next level unless I reveal it to him. Let's go to the God level. What's the chances of him knowing God? Zip. Cannot know God. He could see me and still not know me. Can't see God. What's the chances of him knowing God? Do you see why? It says what it says. We become futile. Foolish hearts are darkened. We become morons because we think because of what's going on in here, we can know what's going on out there. Can't. We can't. That's so sad. We go to the higher level and we realize we cannot know God. A nuclear physicist has just as much chance of guessing what's happening with God as a 6-year-old child, because his education, his experience, and his knowledge and all the things that he has means nothing. It brings nothing to the table. Education or no education, what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? Nothing. The educated person thinks that they're going to rise to the level of academia and they're going to figure out who God is. No, you're not. A religious person has the same problem. I'm going to be so religious. I'm going to be so self-sacrificial. I'm going to deny myself in every area. I'm going to become so strict and so obedient, and then God's going to have to tell me. No, he doesn't have to do anything. It's amazing. We are so smart or dumb, educated or not, religious or not. It's available to anybody who will lower themselves. It's down here. Just got to say, I don't know, but I would like to know. God's available for you. I had a professor at Texas A&M. I had a degree in biology. My hardest class that I went through was, I hated the whole class, part of the problem, called invertebrate zoology. If you ever hear that, if that's ever on your elective course, don't take it. Don't. And if you can take it and do well, I'm humbled by you. It's a terrible class. It was terrible, largely had to do with the teacher. The subject was tough. Invertebrate zoology means you're studying animals that don't have a vertebrae. So that's all your worms, all your, it's not including snakes, but all your crustaceans, all this stuff. So we were studying all these things. We had to go through labs. We had to look at them. I had to pull them out of, 25-year-old specimens and tell what kind of species and anyway, where they lived and all this stuff. It was tough. I enjoyed that part of it. I didn't enjoy the teacher. And the problem was this woman was too smart for us. She was, way up there. So smart. So many letters after her name, so many accomplishments, was so well known in her field of research. She had a worm from the bottom of the bathysphere of the Gulf of Mexico that was named after her. What kind of famous people do we have here? This woman. She's that level. She just, way out there. Now, she was awesome. She was smart in her field. She was the best there was, but she had a problem, and that was she couldn't communicate any of that to us dummies. You had no idea what she was saying, what she meant, where she was headed, and I can assure you if she said it in class and she had it in her notes and it was in her book, she required us to read her own book, you can be sure none of that was going to be on the test. Smarter people than that. You can figure this stuff out. No, we can't. That's why you're our teacher, but she couldn't connect with us. It's interesting. I find it just comparing her to God. You have her super intelligent, not taking anything away from her. You have God who is infinitely intelligent, who can speak to us as children. I came to know Jesus when I was 8 years old. I know a lot more about him now. I know a lot more. I've got all kinds of education degrees, but I'm telling you, I don't know anything more really, practically, than what I knew when I was 8. He could speak directly to me. In fact, he did. I didn't have to have an education to know him. I just had to submit to who he is. That's why it says what it says here in Matthew 18. Notice Jesus says, surely I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children. Now, don't act like children, please. That's not what Jesus is saying. We don't need any more of those. Children, though, don't have a degree, do they? They don't have accomplishments. They don't have education. They don't have letters after their names. They don't have things that people should lower their eyes when they're in your presence kind of thing. They don't have any of that. They're just kids. See, unless you can divest yourself of all that everybody says is awesome about you, unless you can do that, notice Jesus says, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because the information about Jesus is down here. You're going to have to stoop to get it. As long as you hold on to your stuff and keep your nose in the air, well, I'm just going to figure out who God is. Well, then, you know what? It will be inaccessible to you. You stay that way, it'll be inaccessible forever. Forever. The knowledge of God can't be acquired, can only be received. But you've got to ask. And you got to say, I can't do it without you, unless you reveal it to me. And then you'll come to know who he is. I'm going to ask if you would bow your heads and close your eyes with me as we think about what God has said to us this morning. The God of the universe, the infinite God, putting things on the bottom shelf so that everybody would have access to it. It's not inaccessible to the wise and to the clever. It's just that they won't access it. I hope that's not you. I hope that's not in your heart. I hope you're not clinging to what you've done and what you have and what you're known for. I hope you could set those things aside and say, God, I can't know you any other way unless you reveal yourself to me. Unless you in your mercy tell me who you are, show me who you are. With that, if you can get yourself there, that humility, God will show you so much stuff. God, I thank you. I think we can rejoice along with Jesus that you made it available to all of us. You made it available even though in making it available, you've revealed what our hearts are really about. In some cases, we're just about ourselves. And if that's what we remain with, we'll always be just that. We can't know you any other way unless you tell us. We can't know what's in your mind unless you show us. We can't understand you unless you reveal yourself to us. God, I pray that we would humble ourselves today and say, God, whatever it takes, I just want to know you. Thank you for speaking to us today. Thank you for this time that we've had together. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for visiting. Find us at www.islandbaptistchurch.org.